Welcome back. I just wanted to pop in real quick and talk about something that occurred to me this morning while I was on my way to the grocery store to pick up a couple of things. And I thought it was a really interesting concept, and it may be a little early to be able to get into a lot of the depths of it, but just kind of at first glance, I thought it was really profound, actually. And that is the concept of like consumerism versus creativity. I don't think really any of us need the definition of consumerism, but I think that twisting it and looking at it from a couple different perspectives might be healthy. Um, we can be consuming, obviously, products, services, but we can also be consuming other people's ideas. Um, we could be consuming a lot of podcasts, a lot of entertainment, a lot of other people's ideas and thoughts and views on the world and stuff. And these things can kind of become a part of our reality because as we consume them, it just becomes, it's like a lie that's been told to you enough times, you start eventually believing it because it seems so familiar, you've heard it before. Kind of the same concept of the things that we are consuming kind of dominating our lives in that we're constantly consuming. We're like Pac-Man, just going through life, just nom, 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 you know? And really without a distinct purpose or really, I think, the self-awareness to recognize how much we are consuming, where that is coming from, what it may uh, do to us, whether it be harmful or beneficial. I think more aware people tend to consume a lot more beneficial stuff, but it just brought me to this realization of, everybody wants kind of this perfect world. We all have a vision of some type of utopia, some type of, 5D new earth, slap whatever label you want on it. It's all basically in our minds kind of a similar thing, a place where we can be in harmony, we're not controlled, manipulated, marketed to, there's not ploys and scams, and we can just go about our lives and live a really healthy, balanced life. But the thing that occurred to me is as long as we're sitting here and constantly consuming things at this rate, we're not going to get to that point because we're not creating. We're consuming. We're consuming what somebody else has created. And it may be a good source. It may be somebody that doesn't have your best interest in mind and they're just a business out there trying to make money. Or, Instagram influencer out there trying to get more followers and, all that kind of stuff. We don't really know necessarily, unless we're really paying attention, where the intentions are coming from the people that we're consuming this stuff from. And as I think you get more self-aware and you start looking more into that and deciding where you are going to kind of frequent in your consumption. Maybe you find a really great channel that you like on a podcast or YouTube or whatever, and you listen to stuff that they have because it's very insightful, it's very informative, it makes you think outside the box. That's obviously a lot healthier than just kind of sitting in front of a TV and letting whatever TV show's on just kind of play, or having it in the background while you're sleeping or something like that, where you're consuming stuff that you're not even really being aware of who's involved in it, where is it coming from, what's the messaging behind it. But I think that the thing that really was profound to me about this thought was, in consumerism, part of the problem is we're always taking. It's a very greedy type of energy, consumerism. It's very low value. Something breaks, oh, well, I'll buy a new one. People don't fix things anymore. People don't, a lot of times because they don't know how to fix things. Or they don't think they have time, which is just one of the biggest BS arguments ever. I know that there are people who genuinely are like working multiple jobs and have children and stuff like that, and they might have an argument for they don't have time. But the average person working one job, and I mean, there is time. There is definitely time. People have a very big time management issue in the world today because we fill our time with distractions and things that aren't necessary, and we're not using our time well. But the thing is we're taking. To consume is to take. It is to absorb and use and crap out on the other side. It's very fast-paced. It's very instant gratification seeking. You know, you go to the store because you're feeling blue and you go buy a bunch of stuff and you feel better because, ooh, I got new stuff. Stuff that you might put in a closet or on a shelf and not look at again for months, years. It's not benefiting you to be a consumer on that level. So I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, how do we break free of consumerism? You know, obviously we could do a lot of different analogies. I know somebody just did one on kind of a mental obesity was the topic of being aware of what you're putting into your mind, and I thought that was a really great one. I did my video on mental hoarding, which was kind of another similar concept of clearing out the mental clutter. But I think that the real answer to it is people getting away from consuming and starting to create. We are creators. Our creativity is one of the things that makes humanity so unique. You know, we create music, we create books and poetry, beautiful works of art, feats of engineering. We're creators. And the problem is that society has gotten so fast-paced and so consumer-driven that we are no longer creators. We've lost that part of ourselves. And I think that if we started looking at it as, instead of consuming, how can we create? Perfect example of this, for the last year and a half, I've been working for a man who is a hoarder. And part of my job has been to go through and sort out his stuff and organize it and try to make sense of it all. Every week he goes through about 5-liter jugs, 5 1-liter jugs of sweet tea. Pays like maybe $2 a pop for them, something like that. In the time that it would take to get in the car, drive down to the store, pick up those 5 1-liter jugs of tea, and come back and put them in the refrigerator, you could have 5 gallons of tea. You could have 10 gallons of tea made. This is the problem with consumerism, is that instead of creating things, we're going out and consuming what is already made for us. We are expending our own finances to do this. And as opposed to spending, $10 a week in jugs of tea, he could be spending pennies, a handful of cents a week, and getting tea bags and making his own tea. This is the problem with consumerism versus creating. One is designed to deplete you financially, to make you satisfied with having somebody else do this for you. Because from a marketing perspective, it's genius to convince people that it's so much easier to just buy a jug of tea than to make their own. And this is where people have gotten lazy, and this is where, parents haven't passed down certain information and people aren't willing to go out and search out the information. Maybe somebody says, well, I don't know how to make a gallon of sweet tea. There's such a thing as the internet. Like, there's really no excuse for it, but the marketing and everything has gotten to this point where people have gotten satisfied to consume versus to create. If you're decorating your house and you have a spot and you want to put, a nice picture on the wall, how many people are going to go out to somewhere where they can buy home decor products and find some really pretty picture, and they're going to buy a brand new picture? It's probably a cheap print in a nice frame. They're going to pay good prices for it because it looks nice and it's got a status symbol kind of, feel to it. Instead of, say, making their own painting to put there, or getting with a local painter and knowing that their if nothing else, even if they are still spending money on that thing, that they are putting it into somebody who is creating, or creating it themselves. This is how we kind of get out of this cycle of gigantic mass consumerism, is that more people start to get back to their creative sides and get back to hobbies that they can enjoy, that they can work on their skill sets and eventually maybe turn into a career. You know, there's so much talk of people like starting their own communities and wanting to kind of go back to commune type living of like, you know, we'll have some farmers and we'll have some, you know, people that do this and that, and we'll kind of barter and trade. And it's a beautiful idea, but the problem is that for the bulk of people, they're still stuck in the consumerism and they haven't started exercising that creativity again yet. And when I thought about like the comparison of the two, and like the one, you know, going into a more creative society could break down so much of this consumerism, because every time you buy a product, you're creating a demand for that product. If you've ever worked in any type of retail where you've done purchasing, every time you sell one of those items, you restock that item. If next week you sell 3 of those items, now you stock 3 of those items. If next week you sell 10, you start stocking 10. The manufacturing side of it sees this demand increase. They start increasing their production to meet that demand, and it's just a never-ending cycle. However, if we start creating, then these gigantic corporations who are just sitting there and getting richer and richer and richer as we get poorer and poorer and poorer, it starts to offset. Instead of giving to the same things that are raking us over the coals and convincing us that we need things that we don't need, to spend money we barely have to get those things that are going to mean nothing to us in the broad scheme of things, we could just start creating things for ourselves. And then slowly they have to ramp back on their production. They have to cut back on their stores. They start to disappear into the background, where the future starts becoming more communal living, where people are creating, people are getting back to what they're passionate about. People are getting back to farming, having gardens, you know, having mom and pop restaurants, being painters, and being able to actually be a painter for a living, because people, instead of going and buying this painting at a home, you know, decor type store, are going and finding local painters and saying, I would love if you could paint me, you know, a beautiful picture of the Smoky Mountains. You know, here's a photograph. If you could copy it, that'd be amazing. I want to put it on, you know, my office wall. Things like that. We could get back to that kind of life. It wouldn't be an overnight thing by any means, but this is something that I feel like is very important, because we are creators. You know, and even in terms of, you know, maybe people, not everybody can be a painter. Not everybody can be, you know, an artist, a musician. But there are so many people out there with brilliant ideas. You know, if you're consuming, and it's not to say that if you're consuming one thing, you have to offset it with the same thing. It's just a matter of, in the world of consumerism, we are constantly taking, and we're not really giving something substantial back, unless, you know, we could be doing that on some level. But it's just this kind of greedy type energy. You know, the corporations are being greedy. They want to sell you stuff. They want to, you know, mark it up as high as they can, as high as you're willing to pay. They'll mark it up. And then they'll convince you that you need it when you really don't. You're being greedy because you think you need that thing and you want that thing, and it's a status symbol to you. So you're being greedy and taking it. They're being greedy and offering it for a high price or whatever. It's just this kind of greedy type environment, as opposed to a more balanced, harmonious, giving, receiving type balance. You know, we talk about, you know, starting our own communities and things like that, and going back to like bartering and trading. where, okay, somebody's a mechanic and you need a quick part changed on your car, and you're a darn good cook, and, you'll swap some meals for, quick change out on your, you know, whatever, your belt or something. We can get to that point, but that involves people getting back to their creative side and getting back to what they're passionate about and what they want to do and what they can contribute to the world, instead of constantly taking from the world and continuing this cycle of kind of greed and really low values on things. Because if you think about how many times, like, I can think of, okay, there was a pair of work boots that I used to have. I was a forklift driver, so I had to wear steel-toed boots. I had this one pair of boots. They weren't cheap. The sole started peeling off. Like the sole started peeling off from the boot itself. And I had two options. The first option, I go and get some, what they call it, shoe goo or something like that. It's basically an adhesive specifically for shoes. And I squirt some of that in there and, follow the instructions, all that. It lasted a little while longer. Eventually, I did have to go get a new pair of boots. But how many of us get into a situation that's kind of similar like that, and when something starts to break, we just kind of, it's time to get a new one, chuck it and buy something new, when it's something that maybe could be fixed. Maybe it's something that, there was a shoe repair store. It's the only one I've ever seen in my life. There was a shoe repair store in this little strip mall close to where I used to live. I could have taken it down there to him, supported a local business, somebody who was skilled in repairing shoes, instead of going out and spending another close to $200 on a good pair of work boots. I don't know what his rates would have been, but I could have kept a well broken in pair of shoes and just gotten the sole redone. Stuff like this, I feel like we have to get out of this pattern, because we need to go from a greed-based system to a giving, sharing, creative-based system, where instead of constantly consuming and throwing away, we are valuing, appreciating, creating, fixing things when they get broken. I think if we want to get towards a more harmonious way of life, I think that we're going to have to get out of the consumerism. I don't think it does anything good for us. We've dabbled in it, we've experimented with it, and it's not really working to make us happy. So at this point, we have to get back to what does make us happy. Well, if you like to draw or to paint or to work on cars, do things with your hands, do woodworking, plant a garden, I think it's time for us to go back to that kind of stuff, because in doing that, we are rebalancing a lot of things. We're valuing things more. We're giving our time in better ways. We're giving something back, contributing something back, and it may be a big thing, it may be a small thing, it may be starting a YouTube channel and putting some ideas out there, sharing your insights. It may be, starting a support group or volunteering. But I think there are so many people in the world right now that really are not contributing back to it in a big way. And the ones that are, it's usually that they feel like their job is some type of contribution. They work for like an organization, which is fantastic. And I'm not talking down about that at all. Or I see people who like volunteer at an animal shelter, like a day a week, something like that. Those are good things, but we can be doing more. Those are still structured, organized things. What are we as individuals digging in deep into our own soul and pulling out and discovering that we have to uniquely give back to the world? That is one of the things that only we can give, because only we have our own specific personalities, experiences, insights, family histories. All of us are very unique, and we bring something very unique to the table that is meant to be given back. It's meant to be that we are contributing to the world around us and giving something back, not just always taking and consuming. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm sure there's a lot of different ways that we could break it down, and I don't know, it's one that I may sit and chew on a bit longer and see if I can come up with some really good points on it and do another video that's a little bit more structured. But I would love to hear what you think about it. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Do you think there's some flaws in that idea? Drop me a comment or something and let me know what you think of it. Really quickly, if you aren't following me on Telegram, that's where I'm at right now. I'm still trying to decide if I want to get on other social media platforms or if that's really going to be beneficial at this point or not. I'm not really sure. You can always drop me a line on my email. I'll put both Telegram and email in the description. And I guess if you're new to the channel, my name's Beverly. I could have mentioned that in the beginning, but, better late than never. Anyway, yeah, let me know what you think. And let me know if you've got some creative gift that you've been sitting on that you haven't shared with the world yet. I'd love to hear about it. I think we all have something to give, be it artistically, as far as ideas, concepts. We all have something. And I think that the more we go in that direction, the more we're working towards creating a future that we really want to be in. And I think that people across religious, political, whatever sides, I think we can all kind of agree that we really want a very similar thing for the future in kind of an ideal world. And I think that's kind of one of the things that we need to work through to get there. So let me know what you think. I'll talk to y'all next time. Have a great rest of your day.